This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.
Welcome to What's News Dunedin, brought to you by Hazur Kebab, the radio show that spawned from the 19,000 plus strong local Otipo Dunedin What's News Dunedin Facebook group. The group that's been putting the social back into social media since 2020 with respectful adult debate and a sense of humour. I'm your host, Richard Knights. On today's show, we talk to our wonderful guest, Kelly Campbell, your local neighbourhood activist, who'll be telling us a bit more about themselves and what they do, as well as helping us look back over the posts that generate the most interactions over the past 7 days on the What's News Dunedin Facebook group. Those posts this week are the Education Minister's decision to remove Somali words from children's books, cruise ships, good or bad, and a housing developer criticising the DCC rules and costs regarding the removal of contaminated soil from building development sites. Welcome, Kelly.
Kia ora, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for stepping in. We've got a message goes out to Helen Beattie, who was due to join us today and is unfortunately sick. But thank you for stepping into the breach at such short notice. It's always interesting to see actually that I get lots of people that are quite happy to step up and be guests on the show, which is fantastic. So I'm not here sat talking to myself, which is not something that anyone really wants to listen to be completely fair. Now, if you follow the show or you follow the page, we have a pun of the week on a Monday, right? So we have Pun Day Monday at the beginning of the week, and then the best pun, which is just simply designated by the amount of laugh reacts it gets brought onto the show on a Friday. So we see if it comes off the page and into the spoken word, as well as it gets the laughs on the page, right? So the pun of the week this week is, I got mugged by 6 dwarves last night. Not happy.
Right. So am I supposed to just give feedback if I find that funny or
well,
not?
you laughed. I mean, that genuinely...
Well, to be honest, I normally laugh at a lot of things.
Don't tell Max that, because Max Reed, friend of the show, that's his pun. But I like plays on words like that.
No, I thought that was a good one.
I thought it was
well
a good,
done, Max.
Absolutely, well done, Max. Get the seal of approval from Kelly right now. Now we also have our 3 pop questions. Now the 3 pop questions are the questions that basically tell our listeners everything they need to know about Kelly in 3 simple questions, right? So let's start with the first question, and that is cream teas, right? So you've got a scone, you've got jam, you've got cream. What goes first, the jam or the cream?
I'm glad I got the heads up about this question because I know you're quite passionate about it. I mean, I was shocked to even hear that this is a question. I mean, jam, of course.
Exactly. It shouldn't be.
How can you put jam onto like cream? Like cream has to be on top.
Exactly.
Makes no sense to me.
Absolutely. But I mean, you're right. It shouldn't be a question. But it's highly debated in the southwest of England, in the West Country.
Yeah.
Devon
What's a
and
Kiwi
Cornwall.
staple, but obviously an English staple as well.
I believe it started off over there. So, but again, like Devon do it one way, which is the wrong way, and then Cornwall do it the right way, which is the way science dictates.
That's interesting. I just thought that would always be jam and cream first. Different locations in England actually have jam on top.
They're neighbouring counties, so literally as you go out to the the pointy bit towards the bottom end of England, you got Devon, and then you got Cornwall, which is the last bit to Land's End.
Yeah.
Devon does it the wrong way. Don't know. Don't ask me why. I spent a lot of time in Devon.
How do you spread the jam though? It's just like you can't.
Exactly. I mean, and then what happens if you just get a bite that doesn't have everything in it, and it's just like.
No, I just don't think. That's weird because your work colleague showed me like a picture with just jam on top, but it's just like a drop. You need to have. It's like Vegemite and Mimite. You need to have the same consistency.
We're not talking to Jeff Bartman anymore because of that. And it's the whole radio studio probably explode later. And it tends to set time bombs for me so that everything goes
definitely
bonkers.
Jam because. Yeah, just to me. I guess I can kind of understand why people might think cream because it's sort of like butter. They see it as like butter.
But no, exactly.
But I still think...
No,
yeah,
I'm with you. Like,
it's just cakes. Like if you have cakes, cream would normally be on top of the cake. Like it's just...
exactly.
Or the icing,
Last. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the only question you can get wrong on my show. So from this point
forward...
So
I got it right?
So exactly. So from this point forward...
Perfect.
It's easy, right? So second question is... Who is your favourite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle?
I used to love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It would probably be, I think it's Michelangelo, because he's the one with the skateboard.
See, don't ask me about stuff like that.
You don't know the details of it?
Well, I get them blurred,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And then when I get them blurred, what happens is I then get a text from my wife, who then tells me I've got it wrong.
Right.
And
So
then
she's quite a fan.
She's definitely a fan.
Yeah,
So like I know who they are,
Yeah.
you know, and I love the shows, but to tell you which one holds the swords or which one's got the
Right.
nunchucks or which one.
So this question's for her.
She may have thought this question. This might have been her question.
I think he's got the orange one. Yeah, I liked him because he was the one that always wanted to have fun.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
Maybe that sort of represents me. He's like a doer.
Yeah.
He's not the one that sort of
Nothing
thinks
wrong.
about the details. He just goes ahead and
Yeah,
does
nothing wrong with Mikey. He's just they're all
impulsive, spontaneous.
They're all good dudes, right? So it's as simple as that. So, but to say, don't ask me the details on them because I just get an angry text from my wife saying like, you've stuffed that up again, haven't you? And I was like,
Yeah.
you know, then I have to go home, sleep with the chickens, those kind of
Okay,
things.
that's
You know,
fair.
so
No
it's like,
details in.
It's better to
I'll
avoid
help
it for
you
me.
out.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. Now the third question is a thinker. So have a think about this one.
okay.
So would you rather fart every time you laugh
Oh,
or
okay.
burp every time you cry?
Probably the burping, I'd say.
You think?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's always less offensive for people. I feel like burping's more, you know,
Yeah.
and it doesn't affect people as much, does it? You know.
Unless you got like a stinky burp.
True, but you can sort of, I don't know, I just feel like farting kind of like,
Yeah.
this is a weird thing to talk about, but I feel like it takes up the room more so, like burping, I feel like you can contain it a bit more.
Yeah.
You can just close your mouth.
Yeah, I hear you.
cover it, you know.
It doesn't specify whether that fart's a loud fart, a quiet fart, a
Yeah.
stinky fart, or a like.
So
you know,
farting while laughing, you said.
it's every time you laugh, you fart,
Yeah,
or every
well-
time you burp, you cry. So every time you cry, you burp.
Well, I prefer to laugh, and I feel I probably laugh more than cry, so I'll go with the burping and the crying, I think.
That's my reasoning actually, because I'm thinking I laugh a lot, right? So like I spend a lot of time laughing, and then I would just literally be like, it'd be like Flatulence City wherever I was. It would just be, you know, I could probably like propel myself like, you know, across the harbour or something like
Especially in a room like this, it's quite contained.
No,
So,
exactly. You
know,
really wouldn't.
You might not be getting any guests,
There's gonna be
offering
a few
to come
laughs.
and
There's
visit
gonna-
you here.
No, absolutely. There's going to be a few laughs during the show, and then, like, and seriously, we'd be gassed out by now probably already.
Yeah.
To be fair, so I'm glad. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. I've only cried a couple of times on the show, so that would be like maybe just a one burp, two burps in the 100 shows.
Yeah.
So I think we could.
I think burping is definitely less offensive.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
mind you haven't heard me burp.
Well, that's a good point.
No, exactly. I mean, I haven't heard you burp either.
Can you do it on like?
No, I can't. I can't do it. I can't do them
wait.
to order. Like,
Right.
But my wife gets very upset when I burp because it's a bit loud.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll try next time. You just
Well, exactly. Or
Need,
maybe-
need a soda.
Yeah, need a fizzy drink,
Yeah.
and then away we go. So that's the important stuff.
Okay.
Right, from this point
Oh, cool.
onwards, anything else
Oh,
we
great.
say is just like it's just chit chat. So I want to talk about the three topics of the week. So these are the three things
Yeah.
that have seen the most interaction on the page. Outside of local politics, to be fair, because there's been a lot of local politics stuff, but we don't talk about that on the radio because it's campaigning time, so we'll stay well away from that, especially as soon
that's
as
a bugger.
Oh, exactly. I apologise for that, but it's one of those things that we just
No,
want to
no,
make sure
no,
we
I
don't get in any
understand that.
trouble, and All FM don't get any complaints because they look after me here, so I'd like to make sure we look after them back.
Yeah.
But these are still topics that actually got a lot of interaction on the page.
interesting.
And then the first one was the announcement recently from the Education Minister about the decision to remove some Māori words from children's books, from a handful of children's books. And so the background on this is my understanding of it is it's not every children's book. It's actually like a number of children's books at the very entry level to reading, because in their mind, it's a kind of phonetic learning type thing. So it's, you know, for people that don't understand phonetics, it's those sounds that we make with our mouth that help, you know, form the words. And they're saying that it's confusing. And this is a very much a continued thing from this government about how, you know, if you don't put the Maori words second, you only put the Maori, you know, then people get confused. I've got actually a lot more faith in people's intelligence in this country that actually that's a whole load of rubbish. But to go down to children's books and start removing words from there when actually they're actually in the best place for learning straight away. The babies' brains are like children's brains are sponges, right? You know,
100%, yeah.
But I just
You
find
can learn multiple langes, you know, by the age of 3, I think it might be that, you know.
exactly.
Like you said,
I wish
sponges.
someone had taught me
Same.
languages. I'm
Yeah.
rubbish at languages. I can barely get English right, and mine's sort of tainted awfully by being from Essex as well. So, like, you know, most people don't understand me when I talk, right? Especially in this country.
Well, I think I feel like you sound quite clear, but
it's the vowel thing.
Yeah.
Actually, to be fair, I misunderstand people.
What's that TV show about Essex? That's quite famous, right?
Oh, Towie.
Oh yeah,
the only way
that's
West Essex. That pub that they used to be in, that used to be my pub that I used to go in, like what they called the Sugar Hut.
Yeah,
was the pub there. It used to be called, when I was there, because it was a long time, because I'm old. Yeah. It was called the White Hart. It was a pub that we'd go to, like me and my friends would go to, like long before Towie even existed.
Right. Well, you definitely don't look like one of those.
I don't
people
look or sound
like
those guys, but I struggle with vowels over here. You know, I've walked into a place before and said, "Have you got a bin?" To put my rubbish in, and someone's handed me a pen, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh, that's not what I meant." But I wish people had taught me languages, because I spent a summer in France and I sort of like managed to dodge my way around the language and stuff. But I'm sitting there thinking, if someone had taught me when I was younger, it would be awesome.
Yeah.
And I've got a friend who's married a French girl from me, and they've taught their kids from a young age, and they're fluent, you know. And so this thing about taking out Māori words from and then saying, but that's all right, they're going to learn it next year. That's the crazy thing, to me, is like, you know, it's like, why are they spending their time regressively removing things that we've spent decades to,
and they don't really have a good reason for it.
I mean, it's just purely regressive kind of like racist kind of policy, basically. I mean, it smacks of racism.
And I mean, England and New Zealand are very similar in that they're very about monoculture, and they just have these sort of bullshit excuses really about spending resources and money on like doing these sorts of things. When the National Party, like they go on about economics, that they're like really good at it, but they're spending all this money on like things that. What's actually going to, how is this actually going to improve anything? Like the passport thing. Like that,
exactly.
And it's not even taking the Māori name off it, it's putting it second. Like what's the point of doing that?
Yeah.
Like there's lots of languages. Like most countries are like, multilingual. And even like Welsh, like even in Wales, like they have like their like.
Absolutely, I don't understand a word of Welsh. Right? I don't understand a word of Welsh. But when I've driven through Wales, sort of the bilingual signs, it does not confuse me.
Yeah,
it never confused me. I don't understand.
Malaysia has like multiple languages on these signs.
Absolutely, you pick out, you find the bit, your eyes find the bit you understand.
Yeah.
Like with most things, you give your brain some credit. It actually finds the stuff that you recognise and works with that. And the fact is, most signs are signed by nature in the sense that they're graphical rather than the words are.
That's true.
The words are an addition, right, rather than anything else. So I don't get it. I come from a part of the world. I just don't get it. But what it does to me is it's a deflection and a distraction from the other stuff that they're doing, right? And
distraction politics. That's what they do.
Absolutely, and it's so pointless because it does absorb time and money, right? And people and then they turn around and say, well, I can't afford to finish your hospital for you. Well, how about you don't take Māori words out of books and use whatever tiny amount of resource that you know, because in the big scheme of things, it's probably a lot cheaper than building a hospiple. Yeah. But you add that, you take that out. I mean, and you don't buy 8 new helicopters for 400 million. Buy 7 and maybe put that 400 million for that other helicopter to into that fund that is going to help build healthcare, actually going to keep people alive.
Yeah. Well, it's that whole divide and conquer thing. That's what they do. They use divisive politics. So then they don't want us to be united on like the common issues that we have, which is, I mean, it's based on, they do race-based politics to divide us. And it's really, on regards to our, the class system, basically, like we're all working class, the majority of us. And that's what they try and do. They throw in this race card to say that's the issue between us.
They're getting more than you are, and they just try and divide, don't
which
they?
is untrue,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's all sort of based on like lies, basically. But people have to believe that because maybe it's easiest just to discriminate against people who are more marginalised than you, and so then they just feel like that's like the easier option instead of looking at the top, like the other ones that are the problem. The other ones that hold all the power.
It is easier to punch down.
Yeah,
right. It is 100%. Easier to punch down,
yep.
and sadly in society we do that.
Yeah.
But what I would never expect is that the people at the top are the ones doing the worst punching down, and that's the issue I have with politics. Full stop. Actually, is the people right at the top.
Well, they're always punitive. Like they're always blaming the beneficiaries and the single parents. And,
while they're sitting there like with their subsidised lunches in Parliament and their expense claim forms that some of those expense claim forms for a year for an MP would be larger than a minimum wage,
of course,
salary for a local worker.
Who are the people who don't pay taxes or they evade taxes or don't pay much at all? We're the ones that are paying the most tax.
Absolutely, we contribute the most and we get the least, and that's one of those things that really winds me up as well.
But they do the divide and conquer because that's the power we have, is the people power. There's more of us than them, and so that's their way of actually preventing us from doing that. And they obviously then make a lot of people struggle because of the high cost of living. So they do all those things. Those are all tactics to make us not actually come together and organise. And I sort of feel like, I guess, as you called me, the neighbourhood activist, I quite like that title.
If you use it, you do have to pay me royalties. See, that'd have been a fart right there. That would and then we'd have been, and then I'd laughed as well, and it'd be like, was that you? Was that me? Like, who's responsible for that one?
But that's what I feel activism is all about, is having a voice, and sometimes that's what sort of pushes me to do it. I don't really sort of particularly think I'm like a speaker or anything like that, but I do really believe in it's just supporting everyone, basically, just supporting the community. And to me, it's about kotahitanga, like solidarity. And to me, I feel like that's kind of like my role in activism, is to actually bring these communities together.
Fantastic. Yeah. And we're going to talk about that a lot more.
We'll talk about it a lot more in
the second half
obviously, in
of the
regards
show.
to this, I'm against it. I'm Māori, but I didn't grow up with my culture. It's a bit of a long story, but all of it's connected to the impact of colonisation. Regards to myself and my whānau, and I definitely see all the effects of colonisation. Still now, that's the thing, is people say it's in the past, but for Māori and for any other Indigenous people, it's like we're still living the past, because we're dealing with the impact of what's happened with our families. And it's just, like my dad was in the 60s and 70s, was banned for speaking Māori. So it's still very fresh,
Of course.
And so if you lose the language and the culture, then it creates a whole lot of, as you can imagine, social problems and intergenerational poverty and violence, and just all the things that you can think of. And it's really hard to get out of that. So for me, something like this is a really big deal.
It is a big deal.
It's only really been in the last few years for me that I've reconnected, and it's a challenge, but I think in the last sort of 15 years or so, I would say that it's come a long way, and that's why it's obviously very disappointing that this government, has really turned everything back and regressed, as you've said, because I know I'm obviously not a National Party supporter. I think it's probably quite obvious. But when they got in, I was emotional about it, because I knew they were going to do these things.
This was coming.
It's not surprising to me, but it's quite hurtful, as you can imagine. It's quite painful because it brings up all this, not having my language and culture for most of my life, and the impact it's had on my family. So to me, it's very personal that they're doing these sorts of things. So
I've got a feeling we're going to come back to that quite a bit in the second half of the show. But cruise ships. Good or bad? There was an article with the wonderful Rachel McGregor. And she's a friend of the show, a personal friend. Love her to pieces. Right. Does the port-to-port cruises. There was an article about there's less cruise ships coming, of course, and how businesses can be reliant on cruise ships.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So and I totally get the local economy side of things, but I also. Bruce Mahowski, friend of the show.
Yes, I know Bruce.
We all know Bruce. A big advocate of fewer cruise ships. So it's one of those things that I see the pros, I see the cons. In my mind, the cons outweigh the pros. Right? I think I'm always going to be that way, because actually the damage that those ships do, not just in port, but out there in the sea where no one's watching. I think that we could be smarter. I mean, if they could have cruise ships that were more environment friendly, then I'd absolutely be behind that totally. But I struggle with the environmental impact that cruise ships bring, despite the fact that
What's
they bring
the diesel that they use. I know that.
It's everything.
I'm not an expert when it comes to cruise ships, but I've spent quite a bit of time now with the climate activists. So that's the Climate Liberation Aotearoa, which includes Bruce, and so I've obviously learned quite a bit from them. And that's the thing. It's not like it's to do with the cruise ships, and then obviously everything that sort of comes out of the cruise ships and the damage it does to like the, I guess to like the coral reef and all that. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm just, got little tidbits about it. But that's the thing. They're not sort of saying that we need to ban it completely, but you need to think of like a different way of like, I guess how the cruise ships operate. Like they could change like the diesel. Like, it's not that difficult. They just have to make certain changes.
I mean, I hear there are some remarkably sort of clean boats that I've heard this. Again, I'm not.
It's a possibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it wouldn't affect the local economy, because I know that there's marketplace people that are out in Port Chalmers, I believe, and so they obviously feel like it's like a threat to their livelihood. So we get that, but. I guess it ties into at the moment what's happening, in the Denniston Plateau on the west coast. It's all sort of tied into that with Bathurst, and ANC supporting them. So Bathurst is that coal mining company, and and Shane Jones obviously goes on about the economics and the local people and the workers, and I get that. I'm obviously for the working class, but there's other alternatives, and again, it's not sustainable.
No.
So, like they might have that job for like maybe their generation, but are they not thinking about like their children, and so on? That's the thing. It's like, why would you want to be working? And again, I'm not blaming the working class people, the employees, because I understand that they have to make a living. But these other alternatives, maybe there can be like wind or like solar energy. Like there's other options that they could use.
Yeah.
And again, I know that the coal doesn't actually benefit the New Zealand economy or the people, because it just all goes offshore. So it's not actually really helping at all.
Yeah.
So I think people just. I understand that individual people are like struggling, but we need to think of the bigger picture and what's going to be.
And we need
better
to be
for
adapting
everyone,
now rather than later. Like that's the other side of it. It's like, the writing's kind of on the wall, isn't it? I mean, like as far as I'm
it's
seeing it.
2025. I mean, come on, like we should be. They keep on promising all this like carbon zero, like they've done that a long time ago. It's like they need to actually put it into action now.
But it comes down to the dollars in a sense,
it's
doesn't
a climate emergency. Well, is it the dollars in a sense?
Well, for the people that aren't doing it, for the people that are holding back, for me, it's all about the mighty dollar. Because actually, we can see the writings on the wall. We know that we've got to look after the planet. The science supports the fact that the things that we're talking about, and we need to be making changes and adapting now. Because if we can adapt now, then we're ahead of the game. And actually, we don't hit a economic crisis because of the fact that the climate crisis has dictated that this can't happen anymore. Like, let's say cruise ships stop tomorrow, right? And they're not going to. But if they did, then what are those other businesses doing, right? They all go to the wall, or do they? But if they're succession planning, or they're starting to think about that now rather than later, then if that suddenly happens, they're not in a situation. They've diversified their financial model in order to. I sound like a banker now. They diversified their financial. As a banker with a B. And diversified their financial model, and then they're able to they keep going but in a different mode, right?
Yeah.
But if all we do just kind of go, no, I'm not doing anything, and then we get to 2030 or whatever it is, and suddenly we are carbon zero, and then you go, now what do I do?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, well, I understand that the local economy doesn't actually make a lot of money because like everything's on the cruise ship. So they don't actually, the tourists actually don't spend a lot of money in like the shops and the bars and the cafes. Like they,
no,
so
my understanding is per capita they don't actually do huge amounts.
Yeah.
But I mean, it still doesn't mean that doesn't make a big impact on smaller businesses because obviously small businesses work on small numbers anyway. Yeah. So I feel for them, but I also feel that we need to be looking longer term to make sure that we're actually, those great businesses like Rachel's, who's a fantastic. I've been on their cruise.
Yeah.
She's so knowledgeable. She's such an awesome human being. Her business deserves to thrive. Yeah. But whether it can, whether it adapts or not is another matter. She's on the show in a couple of weeks' time as well,
cool.
I'll have a conversation with her about it.
Well, the history of like the things that they talk about when on those sort of smaller tour boats, like it is really interesting because they're talking about the wildlife and flora and fauna and all that. So, I mean, Dunedin's obviously a really beautiful place, like the scenery, like the wildlife we have. But if we're not doing things that are actually thinking about long-term sustainability, like, we're going to lose this, like, something that's really like, we'll consider the wildlife capital of New Zealand, so we're going to lose that. So shouldn't we all be wanting to protect it? The cruise ship, the bus tour
together
operators,
as well. That's
we should all be wanting to do
we should be working on the same thing. So,
Yeah.
final topic of the week is the housing developer, which was Roger Futrell, who was in the paper this week, and he's doing some fantastic work. Roger's a fantastically wonderful philanthropist who's decided that he's going to lose $25 million that he made from, I think it was Southern Hospitality. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that.
Oh, yes.
And it's, I think
Southern Hospitality?
Southern Hospitality. So,
Yeah,
so
I
sold
do
that.
know this person, yeah.
He sold that, and he said he's going to start building community type housing or affordable housing, not community housing, affordable housing, and basically give everyone a foot up with every house gets $100,000 or something as part as a contribution, right, from him, so that he's losing money, right? Which I think is an absolutely fantastic philanthropic, fantastic thing to do. It's awesome that it's giving back. But there was a story in the paper about the fact that he was complaining about the fact that having to clear a site, he's had to. There's some new rules around soil contamination that the DCC are imposing around lead pollution. So, if you knock a building down that's older than 1945, you have to test the soil for lead and lead pollution, right? This is my understanding of it. So this is not every house. This is only pre-1945. So
there's a lot of money
dwellings.
to do that, I assume.
So it increases the cost. I think you said it was like $100,000 in order to clear the site. Because if you test and you find, then you've actually got to clear the contamination, right? Now, there is no safe level of lead, is my understanding of it. And of course, like if you're sitting on, if you're a small child and you're just sitting on the ground, then you can be unwittingly absorbing that pollution, that contamination. So I think the having to clear it is actually a very good idea. But the dollars and cents argument is that you've now made it really expensive, and I can't build that. If I've got to spend another $100,000 on that house, I can't then give that $100,000 away that I was given away.
I get
so
that.
I see his argument, but I don't see the argument that we shouldn't be doing it, if that makes sense. It's just one of those things. If when you buy that site, if you know there's a 1945 house on it and you're concerned, you don't buy that. In my mind, you don't buy that site, right? Because actually, I can tell you straight away, and I'm in real estate, so I do understand that I can tell you that house was built in the 1940s, right? So if my plan is to knock it down, then I need to be building in to my calculations that there's a potential soil contamination issue, and I'd want to know about it if I was buying the house. If afterwards as well, if and again we have to do this. If you know that the soil's contaminated, I have to disclose it. I have to tell people, right? Yeah. Even if I think potentially the soil is contaminated, I have to tell people, right? And I've had to do that. I've had to do it with a number of my things that I've sold, where there was a question mark in the 1950s on a house where they thought someone might be doing looking after mending cars and stuff from home as a business, and of course then there's the risk of the oil getting into the soil. So because it's commercially, and just because there was a possibility that might happen, that's a disclosure. So again, so anyone coming in eyes wide open, right? So again, anyone buying that land eyes wide open. It's 1940. It's a building built in 1930s. Therefore, there's going to be a potential.
And I mean, most of our housing stock is probably around that age as well. So that's always going to be an ongoing issue for people here. But I guess that's always the argument of landlords and property owners. I mean, that comes with all the housing regulations, healthy homes. A lot of. I guess they were sort of saying that was the risk, wasn't it, to bring in healthy homes, that a lot of landlords and property owners would sell their houses. But you're right.
But they haven't. All they've done is not adhere to the healthy home standard. They just try to get around the rules. Maybe some of them, not all of them. I don't mean that against all landlords.
Potentially people might still try and do that. But that's the thing. You should want the people that are living in your houses to actually be healthy,
healthy and safe.
But again, it's all tied in with profit. It's this capitalist system that we live in.
Exactly.
Where the focus is for a lot of people. They don't actually care about what, the housing conditions of what people live in, and it's pretty bad here. There's that whole sort of attitude of, I guess she'll be right, and I remember growing up and. You're just used to being cold, but in other countries, they would think that's insane that you're wearing your hat and scarf inside and a sleeping bag and walking around,
Everyone wears dressing gowns.
But it was seen as a normal thing that you'd always be cold in the house.
And it's still the same.
Yeah,
I left the UK. I left the UK 15 years ago, and the fact that you come to a house and they only heat one room,
Yep.
was absolutely alien to me.
Yeah.
Like genuinely
Because you
alien.
have like
central heating.
Central heating, yeah.
Yeah, I mean we're slightly colder. Don't get me wrong, and we don't. We're more temperate here. You know, we actually get more more warmer days than the UK gets. Being ever so.
I mean, there's obviously still issues with people being frozen, like in homes in the UK. You know.
Oh
like,
yeah, absolutely. It's
have
not,
no heating. You know, because they can't afford it.
But it's not that the house.
It's not that they don't have it. Yeah.
Don't have it. You know, it's not. Most houses will have central heating, but they will potentially not be able to afford to use it, which is a slightly different problem. And again, most houses in the UK have double glazing and had double glazing for years and years and years and years and years. And when I came here to find single glazed houses still was like was very strange.
That's probably one of the biggest issues, I think, and we need to spend money on is obviously, you know, infrastructure and housing is like a big problem. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to move on and talk about you in a little bit. But before we do, we're going to get a wonderful word from our super duper sponsor.
Have you checked out Hazard Kebab yet? It's your go-to for a delicious lunch, a tasty dinner, or anything in between. Order online to save time and pick up some delicious, authentic Turkish cuisine in just minutes. HazardKebabCafe.co.nz. Dine in or take away at 906 George Street.
Are you a kebab fan?
Yeah, I love kebabs, yeah. And that's a great place.
Oh, it is,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think I went there a few weeks ago, but it is a really good place. And friendly staff, like really great team of
good people.
there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so I strongly recommend anyone goes there, not just because he's the sponsor of my show. No, but it's one of the reasons. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, it's just great food.
Yeah,
great food, cooked well, cooked with love.
There always seems to be a lot of team actually. You know, quite often you go to places and there's just not enough people working there, but they always seem to have. Like, they've got
exactly, and they all seem to enjoy themselves.
Yeah, they do.
There's very few people that don't look great, don't look happy to be there.
Yeah,
you know,
and
that's
I agree.
That's a fantastic part of it. So, Kelly Campbell,
talking about myself,
neighbourhood activist. Your friendly neighbourhood activist is the moniker that I've chosen for you. But give us a bit of a rundown. Give us what I call the 5-minute Cliff Notes version of Kelly, and take us from Kelly when a long time ago to Kelly now. What is it that drives you and puts you on the mic in front of me as someone that's actually that I find interesting and want to talk to?
Oh, good point. Well, I'm glad that might sound interesting. It's a bit of a long story. I feel like it's sort of tied up with my personal story as well. I feel like I've always wanted to be part of activism, but I guess for me, and I probably talked about that early on in regards to sort of growing up, Māori and coming from, I would say, a pretty, poor working class background. So I think I was never really able to get into activism because I didn't sort of have that privilege straight away to be able to do that. So I guess for me it's always kind of been long overdue, and I've always wanted to be able to do more in regards to the community and, standing up for human rights. That's always sort of been part of I guess my value system and my mindset of. Yeah, and I feel like that even started when I was a kid. I always sort of felt really strong about that, about sort of. Funnily enough, I actually work at the Red Cross now, and I remember when I was younger, watching the news and things like that, and reading books and wanting to work. Well, I wasn't actually thinking about the Red Cross, but just working as like a humanitarian worker, and I actually even thought about journalism at one stage as well. I sort of like the idea of being able to travel to other countries and work over there and help other people. So I always sort of feel like that's always been sort of part of who I am, that I've always had sort of, I guess, a lot of empathy and even as a kid sort of worry about things that are happening in the world. So I was always sort of really aware. And again, I guess it was, some of it was to do with my childhood and upbringing where I was probably exposed to quite a few things. And so I always had an idea that, life wasn't always great. I didn't really live a really sheltered childhood. So I guess I was always sort of thinking about, what we could do to make things better. And I just feel like that's just always been with me. I don't necessarily think it was really passed on to me necessarily, but it's always sort of been kind of part of who I am. I've always wanted to help people. So I guess all the professions I thought about doing was always connected to helping people. Nurse, teacher. I'm now a social worker. So I guess that's always sort of been on the forefront for me. And I've and I've never just sort of thought about my sort of, what's happening to me, like, I guess in my own life. I've always sort of thought of the bigger picture. I've always been aware of kind of like what's happening internationally. And so that's always been something that's always been on my mind. And, so that's a bit of a long, starting point. But, and as I mentioned, like at university, when I went to university, I was involved in sort of different protests, but I probably wasn't really sort of seeing myself as an activist. I was more sort of showing up to things, but not really like taking like a lead role or anything like that. But again, a lot of that was due to sort of my own life circumstances of kind of like struggling and dealing with my own personal challenges. So I feel like it's kind of been like a long time coming where I've wanted to get into a position where I can do more, and now I feel like I am. Like I'm a social work manager. I work at the Red Cross. I probably can't get into too many details about that, but in the last 8 years I've worked at the Red Cross. So I started out as a social worker, then I became the manager. And so I work with the former refugee community. So obviously it's very sort of connected to, the main kaupapa, which is the Palestine kaupapa that I'm part of. So I guess that's sort of the short story of like how I've like become connected to that. So was through my mahi. But again, I've always had that sort of real sense of like, wanting to make the world a better place, even though it's sort of, that sounds pretty, well, not cheesy, but, I'm not sure what the word to use, but, that's always sort of been something that's been part of who I am, I guess.
It is cheesy, but everyone loves cheese. So, like, as people love cheese
too.
Like, absolutely. I mean, if someone doesn't like cheese, I'm questioning them as a human being.
That's true.
Genuinely. Because there's so many types of cheese. Like, even if you don't like one type of cheese. Like,
I don't understand people who don't like cheese. I've met one person. It's very rare.
I get it if you're lactose intolerant, but then again,
even people who are lactose intolerant normally like cheese.
There's often cheeses, it's not that they don't like it, they just can't eat it.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. But I mean, whilst it is cheesy, I think it is I think it's very important. Like because and I'm a firm believer that activism finds you rather than you find activism.
That's true.
Like, because people would call me an activist. I've been asked, "Are you an activist?" And I'm like, "No." And then I look at it and think, well, I guess I am because I'm a person that stands up for the causes that are important to me and as important to me as important to the wider community as well. So I'm standing there with a bloody megaphone, on hospital protests. Suddenly I'm thinking.
I gave you that megaphone.
That was your megaphone. Absolutely. I mean, I didn't come prepared.
I thought that might be the first time that we actually talked, or was I handed you the megaphone?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, but again, it's just one of those things, right? And then suddenly I'm at the front of a protest.
Yeah.
And people going, "You're an activist." I'm going, "I'm not an activist. I'm just I'm a bloke with a big voice." But actually, it turns out that, as I say, activism kind of finds you, right? And a lot of people talk about activism or use the word activism perhaps in a derogatory manner, and it's not. It's actually, in my mind, activism is actually about standing up for what's right. Yeah. When perhaps others aren't, or others are shirking their responsibilities when it comes to. Yeah. Standing up for that kind of thing. Yeah.
And there's different ways of doing that. Not everyone's going to be on the picket line or anything like that. There's different ways of, like doing this radio show, like writing, like in a newsletter, even just talking to people about it. I still think that's activism. You're still advocating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the stuff that I do on What's News Dunedin, I wouldn't. It's not. You wouldn't class it as like an activism page, like perhaps you'd like the Climate Liberation Aotearoa page.
Yeah.
You'd look at
I definitely love doing that stuff though.
Absolutely. But you look at that and kind of go, that stuff that you can see that's activism.
Yeah.
It's very clear that that's activism. But just being a positive person that wants to stand up for the things
100%.
and for the people that perhaps can't, because they're being smashed by life like as much as anything else, and because we sit there saying it affects me, right? But I'm doing it for them.
Yeah, you're sort of not. It's like an indirect impact. You're not directly impacted, and I feel like if you have, if you've got any sort of privilege, and again, like I sort of said, now that I'm in a place in my life where I do have privilege, and I just feel like it's the right thing to do is to actually stand up for people who can't speak up for themselves. They don't have that voice, and it's like we have to do that. And for me, also being Māori and being really now becoming more connected to that side of me, I just feel like even being Māori is like activism. It's just like living every day, like showing that you're Māori and being like proud of that. You know, I mean, that's activism in itself.
It is, but you shouldn't have to do that kind of activism, should you? That's the other side of it. When you consider the country that we are, and you know the effort and the work that's gone in over the last definitely 50 years, maybe more than that, to sort of drag us kicking and screaming from colonial days into something that's more resembles a partnership and a vision of a country that is truly bicultural. And then you've got this horrible government that's like in 2 and a bit years is literally trying to drag us kicking and screaming back into the 1950s and do so much damage that it's going to take another decade or more to kind of pull back. I mean, I've noticed the difference, right? So in the 15 years that I've been here, right, I've noticed the going from strength to strength to strength to strength of in Capstone, Māoridom and everything that's there.
I agree.
And I've noticed that, right? As an outsider, one of the things I loved about the country was the fact that there was that kind of bicultural thing. Whilst we were a multinational country, you know, multi-ethnicity, we are a bicultural country at the core, right? One of the things I loved, right? I just, you know, it's beautiful to see, you know, little bits of words being included in conversation. I've started using them, and I very much consider myself Tangata Tiriti, you know, as an ally and a firm believer that this is the way it should be.
Yeah.
So I've seen that growth over 15 years, and I've seen it drag back as well. Like it's been noticeable for me, and I'm mortified by that regression.
Well, there's a lot of words that's just like commonplace now. Like all Pākehā would know like multiple words, like without even really not understanding it. Like that's the thing. It's just become like every day. And I mean, I still have a lot of hope in it because I do think, like you said, there's been a lot of like you know, progress. And again, I really sort of respect and admire like the young people, you know, and well, you know, 20s, 30s. And younger than that, like they're all sort of trailblazers, you know, and they are continuing to like, you know, demand that this, you know, that we continue to be bicultural and multicultural. So I still have like a lot of hope that, you know, that it'll continue because I do feel like people have invested a lot in it, and that, you know, there's a lot of allies out there. Like I definitely couldn't have, you know, got into the place where I am like now without like a lot of allies, and you know, a lot of my Pākehā and Tauiwi like friends, like they've been a big support. So I do think the majority of people are really like keen for that to happen, you know.
Well, that's genuine. What I've also been impressed with is talking about the fact that this government's probably been the most regressive and racist government that I've certainly seen in the short time that I've been here. What I have been amazingly impressed with is the pushback from Tangata Whenua and Tangata, you know, from all sides, Pākehā.
Look at the treaty principles behind the regulations.
Exactly,
like, you know,
because like I think the government themselves weren't counting on that.
No,
I think the government themselves were thinking we'll just be that little bit racist and a little bit regressive, and we'll just get things through, and then that'll be fine. What they weren't expecting was the absolute upheaval of support that came out, and so I share some of your same hope in the sense that whilst it's going to take a long time to put some of this stuff back, I know we're going to, because actually the nation has stood up and gone, we don't like what you're doing, and as soon as this current coalition of whatever is
that's the best way to describe them.
It's because it's the national being led by the minorities, and that lack of leadership. I mean, the lack of leadership there, the lack of strength in order to see these people just literally being bowled over by the 6%ers, and they're the 36%ers, is just, I just don't understand it. But anyway. People like David Seymour and Winston Peters deserve no place in politics whatsoever. That's genuinely my personal view. But what I am encouraged by is that when that coalition of whatever gets pushed aside, that there would again be an upsurge of hope and change, and to put that back. But the trouble is, it's easier to get rid of it than it is to put it back. Yeah,
definitely, because then they have to spend a lot of time actually just tidying things up, basically, and cleaning up the mess. But I do have hope in it. You know, I mean, definitely Green Party and Te Pāti Māori in like particular have been real big advocates, you know, when it comes to Te Ao Māori, obviously like Palestine as well. They've been like really like strong voices. Labour's coming to the party. I mean, it's always sort of a bit tricky for them because they are a centrist majority party. But I do have hope because there's a lot of individual MPs that I know that I are quite strong, and those two cope up as well. So I think because of everything that's happened now, I mean, they're even really pissed off their own voters, like in regards to like pay equity and like things like that. So I do sort of feel like I'll be pretty surprised if there's not a change in government,
No, we can't be complacent though. Like,
of course. We still need to keep on pushing. Yeah,
I had Damien O'Connor, Labour MP,
on
the show last week.
Yeah, he's going to be at the rally tomorrow, by the way. As well.
And a lot of the Labour MPs do, and the Green MPs turn up, and it's fantastic to see.
That's not surprising because we are like a stronghold here with like Green Party and Labour
absolutely,
Party.
It's very strong. But we had that conversation last week about the fact that actually, like, we do need to not be complacent. We need our voices to be heard next year. When and not be complacent. Just think, they've done such an awful job, they'll get rolled. Because actually, chances are
you still need to be pushing things for sure.
We need to smash them. Like we need to smash them out of the park in the sense that they need to get obliterated in the polls. Not just we scrape by and get a new government in. We actually need to send them packing and hopefully send some of those MPs to other jobs, other sources of employment, because there should be no place for them.
There are those of those jobs actually available. They might have taken them all away. But like for me, it's not even just going back to like the Labour Party and the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, which are going to be the likely ones that will get in together. But I feel like this is an opportunity to actually make big changes because, it still wasn't perfect in the Labour Party. Obviously better.
No, it wasn't.
Better. It's worse than because working in a social service and, I guess all different services really. But for me, working at a social service, you see like the dire circumstances of how much more difficult it's become for, the families that we work with. But I feel like this is an opportunity for us to make really big fundamental changes and, hopefully the Labour Party will be on board with that. But I do think the Green Party and Te Pāti Māori will really, really push those things because I think we could make like systemic change because the welfare system still isn't great. Like there's still a lot of discrimination, a lot of like one size fits all, and for the families I work with, and actually for many people, the majority of the community, that one size fits all just doesn't work, and it's not the workers. Like I work with a lot of those different services like MSD and and they do the best that they can, but it's the system that's in place that's so restrictive and it just doesn't work for a lot of people. There's a lot of systemic discrimination, and I just really hope that the left, and that includes like Labour as well, will really be able to work together, and I just hope we can sort of deal with the issue with that is there's always that sort of in-house fighting of this is how you should do things and then like talking about what's happened in the past, but we kind of need to let that go and actually come together because we have the same common like values and goals that we just need to remember that instead of like worrying about the little details of maybe we have different ways of doing things. But I see this quite often because I guess being an activist you see all those sort of different like left parties and like the socialists and all that. We all kind of have like different ideas about things, but we basically want the same thing. So I think we need to be working together to make those things happen.
Yeah. I want to touch on that a little bit in a second. Before we do, I'm going to get another quick word from our wonderful sponsor.
Have you checked out Hazur Kebab yet? It's your go-to for a delicious lunch, a tasty dinner, or anything in between. Order online to save time and pick up some delicious, authentic Turkish cuisine in just minutes. HazurKebabCafe.co.nz. Dine in or take away at 906 George Street.
I liked what you said about systemic change, and I want to come back to that a little bit because actually one of the things that I think is that we absolutely need systemic change from a political point of view, but what we also need is a brave and sort of like adventurous major party to lead that, right? Because what you've got with the Coalition of Chaos is actually is they're all looking at their shoes and making sure they've got like the best shoelaces, right? So in my mind, that they're very inward looking and they're all about like it's very protectionist. It's very it's very reserved in the way that they go about stuff. They, and so they want to make sure their rich mates are looked after. They want to spend as little as they possibly can on making sure people stay alive, because that's not really important to them. And they want to just kind of protect what they've got.
Yeah.
In my mind, what we need is a Labour government or a Labour Green government or whatever that's actually brave enough to because I think that will gain. I think that from the majority of people I know, that would actually have a huge support as well, because actually there would be people going, that's visionary. That's different. That is setting this country up for the next 50 years to be a leader, like somewhere like Sweden or Finland or those Scandinavian countries that have actually gone through the hard change of kind of going, we can't keep doing what we're doing, right? You look at somewhere like, I think it's Finland, that has got zero homelessness. Or you can't, and because
I think Ireland's the same as well.
I don't know. I know Finland was up, but there's an example there of but it's taken them a decade, a decade or more to get there, right?
Well, that's the issue about politics, isn't it? It's all short term.
Yeah, we haven't even started that journey, and we need to be, there's almost some things that need to be just kind of agreed to that sit outside of politics in my mind.
I agree.
Things like healthcare, things like housing, regardless of what party you're in, there should just be an agreement that those are the important things. Because if we build a society that's got houses that affordable, safe, warm, and we've got people that are living in those houses, and we've got people that are well, then that is the foundation for success for the rest of society.
Well, it's not going to impact on the health system. Like, that's the number one thing. Maslow's hierarchy is you need to be able to give people the basics. It's like they should be caring about that. We're the workers. They should be looking after us because we're the ones that are making them profit. If you can't even give us basic living wage, I even think it's crazy that it's called a living wage. Yeah. Everyone should have access to it. There should be a universal income.
Yeah.
I agree to that. Everyone deserves to have that. We shouldn't have to prove ourselves to be able to eat food and have shelter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they call it minimum wage and they call it living wage, but no one's ever called it barely getting by wage. But it is. It's put me on the breadline wage, right, and send me into crime wage.
Yeah, cost of living, inflation goes up, but not the wages.
Encourage me to be, encourage me to have to break the law in order to protect my own, because we're naturally designed as human beings, biological beings. Forget the fact whether we're human or otherwise. We are designed to procreate and protect. Right, so that's it. The whole of life is, in my mind, the whole of life is like, even when you get down to trees and weeds and right down to the tiny molecules, we're designed to procreate and to protect. Right, so if you put me in a situation where I haven't got enough money and I haven't got enough housing and I haven't got enough food and I haven't got enough this, I'm going to find a way to still procreate and protect. Right, and that means I'm breaking the law. And that means you're pushing me through into the boundaries of society, and you're making life so difficult for me that you're now complaining your prisons are full. Well, your prisons wouldn't be full if people had. I'm not saying universal handouts, but if people lived a life of sustainability, then they, and actually had the things that they needed, the basic human rights. And they've proven this already, time and time again. The science dictates
it's common sense, isn't it? But it goes against that whole neoliberal, perspective of this, the individual's fault that they're poor, and we know that that's
it's
not
society's
true.
fault.
It is 100%.
99% of the time. There's going to be the edges where people go, I've just chosen to be nasty.
That's a real minority, though.
But it is.
And there's always going to be people you have to look after. There's going to be people with mental health issues, intellectual disabilities. I mean, that's just something that you can't get around.
Yeah.
There's always going to be people that are not going to be able to do the same.
But if you invest enough in that bit, then you don't spend as much on the other bits.
I know, I agree.
That's the other side of it. Do you know what I mean? In my mind, if you spend enough making sure people are housed, clothed, and fed, right, and well, right, then you don't spend as much time giving out unemployment payments. You don't spend as much time, dealing with sickness and illness, because actually they don't use the healthcare system as much as they were going to. They don't use this. They don't turn to criminal activities or drugs or alcohol. They don't do that anywhere near as much.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, this government just doesn't really care about the people. It's just short-term profit, basically. You know.
But then the previous governments haven't been great at it. I mean, they have been better. They've definitely been better.
Yeah.
But we can't say it's all this.
No.
This government, do you know what I mean? This
Definitely
government's been noticeably worse.
They're more noticeable. Yeah, you're right. But I agree that the whole system is, it's like there's always like barriers within the welfare system. So when I'm working with families, like they don't want people to get ahead. They want them to stay where they are, basically.
Yeah.
There is no way. Like there's just so many restrictions on like people trying to study, trying to actually progress, out of the benefits, and they make it just so difficult for people to be able to do that. So
exactly.
It's just,
and that's why I think we need someone that's visionary. And some of the stuff that the Greens are coming out with right now is... the whole Green Party, but Chloe is definitely, I think, a really great leader. I mean, it'd be awesome if she could actually, be the Prime Minister. But with the Labour Party, I mean, I like Chris Hipkins as a person, like he's got some things about him, but I do feel like he's obviously quite conservative in a lot of his like viewpoints about things. So I don't think he's necessarily a bad person, but like you said, we need someone who's going to be, wanting to make like systemic change and actually be like a trailblazer. And so I feel like that's the issue there. Is there's a lot of individual MPs that I know that are really sort of pro these sorts of things, but it's about the leader. So I think, no offence to Chris Hipkins, but I feel like we need to change. And that's a great place to stop. I told you we'd run out of time.
Oh, okay.
And fantastic. Thank you very much for stepping in and helping me out. I really appreciate it. Just sit there while I round out the show.
All right, sweet.
Well, that's a wrap for this week. Thank you for tuning in. I've been Richard Knights, and you've all been wonderful. Remember, if you're looking for robust, respectful adult debate about all things local and further afield, and a welcoming online community that doesn't take itself too seriously, come and find What's News Dunedin on Facebook and join our fun. On next week's show, we're talking to Tess Trotter, advocate for community as an answer to personal and shared challenges, and look forward to seeing you next Friday at 12 at Nor FM. And if you want to listen to the show again, or simply share it with your friends, you can find the podcast at oar.org.nz, or even on Spotify or your favourite podcast provider.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.